Pick up at the point where we had been looking at the components of blood, and one of the things that we left off yesterday looking at were some of the proteins that are going to exist in the blood. We had looked at, if you take blood and you put it into a centrifuge, showed how the red blood cells would settle out first, then the buffy coat, being the white blood cells, would settle out next, and then the plasma is what would be left. And so we left off looking at some of these proteins and what can happen if there's not enough in the body due to certain situations of starvation. The topic that we're going to move into today, how is blood produced? Where is it produced? In what part of the bone? The bone marrow. Specifically, what type of marrow? Red or yellow? Red. In children, almost all of the bone marrow in children is going to be red, meaning that almost every bone of their body is going to be producing red blood cells. As adults, we kind of don't have that, okay, because we shouldn't be growing anymore. Now, the overall production that we're going to see about blood, it's going to, and when I say blood, I'm talking about the red blood cells, the white blood cells, the platelets, okay? We're going to find that all of it comes from what's termed a pluripotent stem cell. Are you all familiar with stem cells? Okay? So what we're going to find is there is going to be a pluripotent stem cell, a PPC. Okay? This means that one cell will give rise to red blood cells, white blood cells. How many do we have altogether for the white blood cells? 5. So we're going to have quite a bit that needs to be produced from that one stem cell. Every day, we need to produce about 400 billion platelets, 100 to 200 billion red blood cells, and about 10 billion white blood cells. Have you ever thought about that? What do you think about it now?
It's a lot. It's impressive. Every day?
Every day. Now, when we talk about the production of blood, the term for that, hemopoiesis. Heme is referring to blood, poiesis, the production of. So this is the production of blood. Especially going to be those formed elements. The tissues that are hemopoietic, okay, they are producing those blood cells. In the very beginning, egg and sperm meet. The first tissue for giving rise to the first blood cells is the yolk sac. That's going to be involved in the development of the offspring. Now, the production in utero versus outside the uterus is a little different. I'm not too concerned that you know a whole lot about that, okay? But now, a couple of areas of the body are going to become involved in something dealing with the red blood cells. So if we look at this production of the blood, in the red bone marrow. Now, in children, that's almost every bone. In the adult, I should say, in the adult, ribs, the sternum, the vertebra, the pelvis, the proximal femur, and the humerus are going to have red blood cell production. Now, this pluripotent stem cell, we used to term it hemocytoblast or a hemopoietic stem cell. What this is going to do, this is going to have the ability to give rise to all the elements in the blood, those formed elements. So what are we going to be able to do? Basically, there are going to be chemical signals that will be used. And from this pluripotent cell, we're going to be able to do it's going to be able to form colony-forming units. I know it sounds a little weird, right? This one giving rise to everything. Once it receives the chemical, the colony forming can be formed. So the colony forming, that's going to be a specialized stem cell, but it'll only give us one class of the formed elements. All right, just hold on to that thought. When we begin to look at hemopoiesis, the production, myeloid is letting us know bone marrow. Lymphoid is letting us know that some of this stuff has to take place in the lymph areas. So we're going to need to remember this when we move into the lymphatic system. Now, in looking at this myeloid hemopoiesis, this one is going to give us rise to the red blood cells. There are other things that's going to happen. Now, the lymphoid tissue, that's going to deal with T cells and B cells. Have you ever heard of those? Okay, but we're going to hold on to the white blood cells to get to that. So those erythrocytes, the red blood cells, their formation, very interesting on how we're going to produce red blood cells. Like we noticed yesterday, they have a very unique shape, okay? It's called biconcave because they sort of look like a donut, okay? Now, this actually gives the red blood cell more surface area because the job that the red blood cell wants to do is to carry oxygen, all right? And if you remember, red blood cells were kind of small compared to the white blood cells. So the red blood cells, they're going to be very numerous in number. If you remember yesterday, looking at the slides, there were lots of red blood cells. Their primary job, transport oxygen. Now, how many of you have had the idea that the red blood cells' other function is to pick up that CO2? Has that been your other thought? Okay. The red blood cell will pick up minimal CO2. CO2 is going to travel in different ways back to the lungs for us to breathe it out. Okay? Because the biggest job of the red blood cell, pick up the oxygen, carry it to the tissues, drop it off, return back in the circuit, pick up oxygen, carry it to the tissues, drop it off, and it will be very minimal in what it picks up for CO2. major concern is the O2. Insufficient red blood cells leads to death in just a few minutes. Men are going to have more of these elements in the blood than women, because women are going to lose it due to menstruation. When we begin to look at the red blood cell, it is disc-shaped. I don't even know what size that is. Okay? Micrometers. All right, I have no idea. But during development of the red blood cell, they lose almost all of their organelles. What are the organelles?
Stuff in your cell.
Give me an example. Mitochondria. Well, and ribosomes, nucleus, endoplasmic reticulum, okay, Golgi apparatus. So at some point during their formation, during their development, they spit that stuff out. They don't want it, okay? So the way that they're going to make their energy, anaerobic fermentation, they're going to spit out that nucleus, so therefore they don't have the DNA, so therefore they can't do any protein synthesis or mitosis. Whoa, wait a minute. What is it that I just said the red blood cell likes to carry?
Oxygen.
Oxygen. How does it carry it?
From the lungs.
Do what I said?
From the lungs.
They're going to pick it up at the lungs.
In the disc? Don't they bind
Diffusion.
Have you ever heard of hemoglobin?
Yeah, they don't.
That's a protein. But wait a minute, I'm telling you that now they spit out very early in development the nucleus and therefore can't make proteins. So during that early development, their job is focused on making the hemoglobin molecule. Then they spit everything out, and then they work that poor little red blood cell, the hemoglobin, the iron that's going to be attached to it. It's going to get worked to death to pick up and transport the oxygen.
So did they create the hemoglobin? Or
In the beginning, because see, in the beginning they have everything that a regular cell does. And their job is to make sure that they're going to have the hemoglobin molecule. And therefore, they have to carry out protein synthesis. But when I say very early on, they spit that nucleus out, I'm talking like by day 4 of that cell's lifespan.
And they produce the hemoglobin?
Yes.
Okay.
So the lifespan is in the breath of the person?
The red blood cell itself has a lifespan of roughly 120 days. So from day 40 to 120, they're not making any more proteins.
So when it's created, it's not red since it does not have hemoglobin.
It's red, but it's not ready to function. It's circulating in the bloodstream.
So
It's just not doing anything yet.
so the hemoglobin gives.
Are you trying to think about the color of
Yeah.
the blood? Hold on to that thought, because I'm going to talk about it. Okay? Because I know a lot of people have that little misconceptions about it. Yeah.
Well, we're producing a lot more red blood cells than are dying off at the same time, right?
Hold on to that thought. Because you're going to be shocked at how many red blood cells we destroy per day. Just like you were kind of shocked